to welcome everyone to this ordinary council meeting. My name is Karen Ridley, I'm the Mayor of the Town of Gawler. Welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome staff, members of the community gallery, elected members, media representatives, CEO Henrietta and our lead taker Chris. Yes, so first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we meet on tonight is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. I'd also like to welcome any Aboriginal people that may be with us this evening. So roll call, we have everyone here. There are no apologies. Are there any motions to grant leave of absence, councillors? Nobody's got their hand up, so that's great. And I don't have any leave of absence on file, and there's no non-attendance. Before we go into public open forum, I'd like to just read out some protocols, meeting protocols that we use to ensure that we have respectful behaviours. So the Town of Gawler welcomes and encourages public attendance at all council and committee meetings and council workshops. The general community are welcome to attend and listen. Members of the community can request to speak as a formal deputation or during public open forum. You need to be aware that although your views are welcomed, you will not be able to take a direct part in the debate on any particular item that's on the agenda. You can come and go at any time, but please try to avoid disrupting the meeting when leaving. We try and ensure items of public interest are discussed early on in the agenda. The safety of people here, council members and staff and community members is paramount, and as such, no person except council members and employees shall be permitted beyond the podium. As a general rule, information is not handed out to council members of council or committee meetings. Any information wanting to be presented to members requires approval from the chair or the mayor before the meeting. At council, the mayor will make it clear to the gallery that the council member seating area cannot be accessed during meetings. No person shall be permitted to engage in conversation with council members during meetings without the express permission of the chair. Disruptive behaviour will not be tolerated, and in accordance with section 30 of the Local Government Procedures at Meetings regulations, a member of the public behaves in a disorderly manner or cause an interruption may face a penalty of $500. All members are asked to be mindful of potential safety concerns and bring such concerns to the attention of the Mayor or the CEO, who will then consider what action, if any, may be deemed appropriate or necessary. Anger, rudeness, ridicule, obscene or profane language, impatience and lack of respect for others and personal attacks are not acceptable behaviour. In the event that the meeting attendees become unruly, either individually or as a group, where it's deemed that a threat to public safety or to an individual exists, the Mayor may suspend the meeting and police attendance may be requested. Any person making irrelevant, inappropriate or offensive remarks who becomes boisterous while addressing the council may be cautioned by the chair and only be given the opportunity to conclude his or her remarks on the subject in an appropriate manner and within the designated time limit at the discretion of the chair. Any person failing to comply as cautioned shall not be allowed to remain as part of the public gallery. The Mayor, for the purpose of maintaining order and decorum at the meeting, may direct the CEO to escort them from the meeting. So now we'll move on to public open forum, and I have 3 people that have expressed a desire to speak, and I'll name them and then I'll ask them to come up in order of how I've named them. So first is Mr. Jeff Watson, second is David Marr, and third is Ian Tooley. So Jeff, if you'd like to come forward, and you might need to turn that mic on, or David, if you can assist with it. Is it on? Thank you. And I think 5 minutes, we have 5 minutes. So Jeff, we'll probably give you a 30-second warning if you need it. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeff Watson. I have lived in Blanche Street for 38 years. I'd just like to provide council with some additional information regarding the recent petition that was submitted about traffic issues in our area. Over the years, we have been told, which they need to go back in history a bit, that one of the earliest activities in this area of Gawler East was sand mining in Clonlee, all done by horse and cart, and that resulted obviously in a track being formed from Clonlee to Lindock Road. When the area was subdivided by Eliza Marnie in 1873, we believe this track was conveniently incorporated in the subdivision and became Blanche Street. The southern section of Blanche Street, that is the section closest to Lindock Road, measures about, on our estimate and measurement, 5.7 metres wide from curb to curb. This narrow measurement would appear to be a function of its original use as a track for horse and cart. At 5.7 metres, we believe this section of Blanche Street is only 200 millimetres wider than the classification of a lane under the SA infrastructure guidelines for suburban roads. We have parked 2 cars next to the curb and you cannot get a car in between them. In fact, a motorbike might have some difficulty. Hence, it's not a main road, it's not a local road, and the closest thing is that it can be classified as a lane. We also estimate that it carries up to 1,000 cars per day. This is when schools are operating. It's calmed down a bit today, travelling in both directions. So we would like to urge council to undertake, as part of the response, traffic counts on Edith Street, Short Street and Blanche Streets during a normal period, including when the schools are open. We would also suggest that the physical metrics of these roads and verges are assessed against road infrastructure standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So next is David Marr from the Squash Club. Welcome, David.
Good evening. I'm here to plead for the continued existence of a vibrant community group and the facility that enables them. I know you've heard this before, but it remains just as poignant. This club, I've checked through their records for the last 5 years, has paid $12,000 toward the Gawler South Football Club during 5 years. In the last 2 years, another $4,000, $4,500, $4,150 of the cheques paid to the club were never presented. I do not know why. The particular facility that's there is an expensive thing to build and an easy thing to demolish. The cost of demolishing and redoing the actual courts into, I think, a toilet block and a changing room is more expensive than actually putting a purpose-built facility there. I think these clubs can work together. Right now, the footy season is concluded for the 6-month period it's been going. At the moment, the squash players are locked out of the facility, can't use it, where they use it all year round. There were 3 courts. They had 1 removed and the squash group accepted that for the use of the footy club for changing rooms. That has occurred. It's been carpeted, a hole attempted to be knocked in the wall to make a door through to the second court. It's been taken. The club's not asking for the third court back. They want to share the facility. I believe the council has a mandate, in my opinion, to facilitate the community groups to work together. I don't think that all effort has been made here to actually come up with a solution based on maths. I think the solution has been reached based on emotion. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having an emotional decision. They can be the best decisions. But I don't understand why one group should be stopped from participating in the community when the maths doesn't add up. Have you got any questions that you'd like to ask me?
I'll take questions at the end, but thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So next we have Mr. Ian Tooley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm talking about the motions on notice. The Australia Day motion item 15.4, I followed exemplary process when I moved this back in February. Because it was a contentious issue, you'll notice I put a letter to the editor. I invited people to come to the gallery to speak. I invited people to contact their local members. I was totally open and transparent because I wanted people to be engaged in that. People came, they spoke on the February meeting, but we ran out of time. And so it was moved to the March meeting. At the March meeting, John Bolton invaded the chamber. I think you were mentioning that sort of thing not being allowed, but he entered the chamber and handed out material. The mayor said nothing, the CEO said nothing, and he did that unfettered. At the March meeting, I moved and I began the discussion on that motion. I pointed out some of the facts, which I hope Councillor Shanks will continue with tonight. The Australia Day date has changed over the years. It's not always been the 26th of January. 26th of January is a relatively recent construction. Indigenous peoples see January 26th as an offence, as Invasion Day, as the beginning of legitimised genocide. For Gawler to say that we value our Indigenous people, to have our shield, to have our statement, to have the flag, to say that we have a reconciliation action plan, but then to not listen to the voice of our Indigenous people is a farce. You cannot have reconciliation if you don't listen to the voice of the Indigenous people. Many councils across Australia have moved away from the 26th of January. And in a recent ABC Australia Speaks survey of over 600,000 Australians, about 60% say it's time to change the date. What happened on the March of 21st was a travesty. I didn't call for a change of the date, I called for a discussion, a mature discussion in our Gawler community. First of all, Councillor Hughes tried to pull a gag motion to shut me down. Then Mayor Redmond shut me down in reply by misquoting Regulation 12.10, saying that I could not add new material. That doesn't apply when you're in reply or rebuttal. It only applies when you're speaking with the approval of the council to explain something. I was in rebuttal and I'm allowed to, but I was shut down. When it came to the vote, nobody spoke against the motion, but you voted against the motion. Members, you have an obligation to let the people know why you vote the way you do. If you're going to vote down the motion tonight, then have the guts to speak up and tell the people why you're voting against the motion that Councillor Shanks has put forward. Next motion. Motion item 15.5. Whenever I submitted a motion on notice, I put a background statement. Background statements from members are not allowed. But if any of these executives here put forward a recommendation, the report that they produce is printed so the public can know their thinking. And yet this is the body that makes decisions, and yet a member from this body who puts forward a motion, their background statement, their comment, their report is not tabled, it's not included in the agenda. Therefore, the public do not know my thinking or your thinking. When Mayor Redmond moved the boundary reform motion without notice, or motion on notice, sorry, motion on notice, it was printed with no background information because it was a motion on a stupendously impactful motion, and yet no background material provided for the public to know the thinking. This is a travesty of justice. It's not transparent. If our executive can have a report put in, then a member should have the right to have their report and their background statement put in. That's the essence of my motion in 15.5. And finally, my motion in 15.6 is the extremely dangerous situation that exists at the roundabout, the Red Banks roundabout, where the students from Xavier try to cross. I travel that road regularly. I travel at the time when they're going to school, when they're coming out from school, and kids being kids, they take risks, unnecessary risks. My motion is asking that we recognize there's a danger to life, and I'm asking that we have a report brought back on what we can do to make it safe for those young people. They will act on impulse. They're kids. We need to protect them. So I would ask everyone that you vote in favour of those 3 motions on notice that I have put in. And I would ask that if you're going to vote against them, have the decency to speak up, use your now 3 minutes, and let the community know why you are voting the way you are.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll ask Mr. Julian Midwinter to come forward. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you. I have come here tonight to talk further on the traffic issues at Edith Street. Since the last meeting, I have been given limited access to the July 2021 traffic survey data, which has shown that on average 1,706 vehicles per day travelled down Edith Street between Lyndock Road and Short Street. Of those vehicles, 10,600 were cars, utes and utes with trailers. 153 were 5-metre trucks. 5 were class 4 3-axle trucks. 7 were class 5 4-metre trucks. 2 were class 6 articulated trucks. 4 were class 7 4-axle trucks. 1 was a class 8 5-axle truck, a truck like this travelling down a little suburban back street. 1 was a class 9 6-axle truck, which is 17 metres long, and 1 was a B double. And for those who don't know what a B double is a 20-metre, 36-tonne double articulated truck. About 3 weeks ago, as I was putting my garbage bins out, I happened to notice a truck very, very similar to this one backing down Short Street from the Blanche Street intersection, whereupon after I quizzed the driver as to what the hell he was doing, he explained that it was too tight to get around from Short Street into Blanche Street, and so he had to back out. I suggested that maybe he should have stuck to the main roads and that wouldn't have been a problem. We at Edith and Short Street are very aware that the movement of vehicles and the use of Blanche Street as an alternative to the Edith Street to get to and from Lyndock Road. And so therefore we conducted our own private traffic survey. The results of these are by no means a comprehensive survey, but the results that we obtained were fairly indicative of what we had suspected was the case. The average number of vehicles that we clocked going along Edith Street at the Short Street intersection was around 253 vehicles per day. 39% of those were either entering from or exiting to Short Street. This ratio appears to be pretty consistent no matter what time of day you are talking about. Now, if you apply that to the 1,706 vehicles per day that were clocked by the pneumatic counter in July, that equates to 2,800 vehicles per day using Edith Street between Short Street and Murray Street. By the way, and it's just part of the issue, the vehicles observed during the count, 62% of those cars failed to stop at the stop sign and 10% crossed without slowing down at all. Infrastructure SA guidelines, which is the document by which the risk matrix that I alluded to or referred to at the last meeting, is the document by which statutory authorities and councils are supposed to guide themselves into the way they view their infrastructure. Access roads are to carry a maximum of 1,500 vehicles per day. Not about, a maximum of 1,500 vehicles per day, and must be a minimum of 7.2 meters wide. Edith Street carries 2,800 vehicles per day. A collector one road can carry a maximum of 3,000 vehicles per day, but it must be a minimum of 11 meters wide. Edith Street is only 9.2 meters wide. A collector road must have the provision for parking on both sides of the road and for vehicles to pass each other in both directions at the point of those parked vehicles. You cannot do that in Edith Street. You cannot pass a parked car on Edith Street without passing over the white line in the center of the road. We believe that exclusion is the solution rather than speed reduction, despite occasional idiots drag racing, which was recently witnessed where two cars were traveling side by side full speed and gaining air at the level crossing when they disappeared
Julian,
at Murray Street.
You want to wrap it up, please?
Okay, we would like to see engineering methods put in, solution put in place to stop cars using Edith Street as a cut through. Thank you.
Thank you. So any questions for any speaker, elected members? Councillor Shanks?
Just to review, Mayor, is staff able to provide a bit of an update on where they're at with the report that is going to be coming about the Edith Street item? Just a quick, for your information.
When's the report coming, Mr. Delena?
Through the chair, it's envisaged that we're likely to get a report early in the new year, per se. We've got numerous priorities that we're progressing. Obviously, this is a recent matter that's come up. Once we can, so yeah, that's effectively where we're at, early in the new year.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Hughes and then Councillor Vallelonga? And Councillor Shanks, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's David Marr, just a question about the Squash Club and whether you'd be after a separate lease or just a shared lease, or what's your preferred option in that regard?
The preferred option. I am speaking on behalf of people that I haven't discussed this with. The preferred option is to see both clubs using the facility collegially. Okay, now whether that's a shared lease or what it is, I think is a sidebar, in the sense that they're both community organisations attempting to operate vibrantly and well together in the community. So why should the squash club have a lease to exclude the footy club? Why should it be the other way around? There's enough land and facility to do both.
Thank you. Now to you, Councillor Vallelonga.
It's about the squash club, but this is directed at Sam, I think. Sam, where do we stand legally? And can you answer that, or is that a Ryan question?
If you could just go through me.
Oh, through
Councillor,
me,
yes.
sorry, yeah.
So legally, in what respect?
We're given no information, and we were supposed to vote on this. We don't know any legal consequences. Is there any? Where is it legally? Because what I'm hearing is that they legally can't be thrown out.
So this might actually go to Chris Parrish. So Chris, can you respond to that question, please? Chris, if you can go up to the microphone. Thank you.
Legally, the current lease sits with the South Gawler Football Club as a shared facilities lease. The squash club, nor the netball club, nor the cricket club actually feature on the actual lease document itself. Those agreements are in place between the football club and those entities. So legally, yes, the football club can exclude squash from being there, which is what's happened in the past. And council can't step in technically and say, no, you can't stop the squash club from being there, because the lease sits with the South Gawler Football Club.
So in the next few months, the lease is coming up for renewal.
Correct.
And what does that mean?
So under the Retail and Commercial Leases Act, we'll present each of the lessees with new leases. They're proposed to be 5-year leases under to meet the guidelines, which means it goes straight to the incumbent lessee. If they wish to take that lease up for 5 years, that lease and the conditions, once they're negotiated between council and the entity, it then becomes a 5-year lease.
So how does the squash club influence that?
Well, that becomes a conversation between the squash club and football and the South Gawler Football Club. That is a separate conversation, totally away from the actual lease itself. The squash club, I don't think are in a position to take a complete lease, including all the grounds and the sporting clubs. I don't think they have tenure to do that, where the football club has the tenure to hold the main lease. It comes down to a conversation between squash and football, which we've had going on for some time now. And my opinion on that was, I thought that was actually sorted out at the last council meeting when the motion was voted down, that was put, I think, by Councillor Cody.
No, the vote of the motion was lost, but there was no other motion. So it sort of stayed the same effectively, because there's no decision being made. And that's my understanding of that. Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Parrish. Now, I think next was Councillor Kosh, next Councillor Shanks, and then Councillor Kosh. Thank you.
This one's for Mr. Tooley. About the Australia Day, you mentioned councils. I was just wondering, can you give me a bit of give us a number of councils that are visiting this already, just a rough guide for the room?
Thank you, Councillor Shanks. I did circulate when I originally put this motion to the council in February. I did have quite an extensive list. There were two parts to that list. One was the list of when Australia Day was declared, and it showed all the varying dates. And the other was quite a long list of the councils that have changed. So they're in the original report that I was put in. I don't have those figures with me, but those numbers have grown considerably since then. I'm not sure it was Mitcham. There was another council. We could have been the first to begin this sort of move. But since then, we've got other councils in South Australia. I think you've looked up some of them that have moved in that direction. Certainly in the eastern states and Western Australia, there are, I'm going to say, probably around 20, maybe more, that have moved the date away from Australia Day. I just don't have those figures with me. I could look them up, I could Google them, but I think the Mayor would declare that I've spoken for too long if I was to do that. But the information is there online. You've only got to Google it. If you Google something like councils that have changed the date for Australia Day, you'll see them. There are a number of sites, and I'm more than happy to circulate those to you tomorrow if members would like that. But there is quite a significant number. They've not only moved the date, but there is an even greater number that are having this mature conversation with their communities. And that is all this motion is asking to do. And if these
Okay.
people vote that
I think
down,
you've
I
answered
think
the
we're saying
question.
we don't want to have a
Thank you, Mr.
conversation about it.
Tooley. I think
And if
you've
we have a
answered the question.
conversation, then I think
So I'll
someone
move
who
on
wants
to
to speak
Councillor
against it
Koch.
could
Thank
speak
you,
against
Mr.
it.
Tooley, if you can sit down. Thank you. Councillor Koch,
Yeah, this is to Mr. Meyer again with this about the squash club.
Mr. David Marr.
Ma, that's it.
Okay.
It's interesting you're talking about the funds that were paid to the football club. I was under the assumption that no money was paid to the football club. Are there records of that? But also you said that some of the checks weren't cashed. So is there, could you just explain around that, the circumstances around that?
I have looked through available information for the last 7 years to check and see what went through bank accounts, what information was available through checking records, and that's how I came up with the numbers. I would also like to say that I'm not quite sure that a conversation has occurred in the sense of a discussion between the football club and the squash club. I think the squash club was simply given an edict to comply. So I would appreciate an opportunity to have an adult formal discussion where there are opportunities to look at the alternative ways to help the footy club to achieve its need to have changing rooms and proper facilities. I think they deserve that. But there's another way apart from destroying something that was purpose-built as a squash club. I'm not aware of the situation where the squash club was closed down in the past. That information I don't have. But thank you very much for your time and thank you for asking the question.
Okay, thank you, councillors, and thanks everyone for coming along and speaking to council tonight. So now we move on to deputations. Now, do we have Pam Young or Sandra Sullivan here? No? We have Mr. Tooley, Ian Tooley, if you'd like to come forward, please, and do your deputation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm talking in relation to item 10.1, the complaint report. On the 3rd of November, while debating the potential for uplift on the Gawler electrified railway line, I made some comments. On the 25th of November, while we were debating the Walker Place toilet block debacle, I also made some comments. I was critical of the executive. I was critical of the reports they tabled. I was critical that we didn't have an option to consider saving the Walker Place toilets. I was critical about the lack of vision in what could be happening with the upgrade of the uplift of the railway line. I echoed the community sentiment that no matter how much community voice or feedback, and in this case, there was a 1,200 people petition approximately, I expressed the view that this administration does not listen, and again shared the view expressed to me by many in the community that the lack of awareness and the lack of interest and lack of vision could only be explained perhaps by the fact that the majority of this executive and admin team do not live in the town. Someone in the gallery took offence at that. On the 26th of November, Mayor Redmond had afternoon tea with some of the staff in the Civic Centre, and that staff member raised the issue with the Mayor. The Mayor gave advice to that person that they could raise a complaint, and she gave assistance in how they might go about
Actually,
raising
that's
a
untrue.
complaint.
That's actually untrue. So I'd like you to retract that because what you've just said is incorrect.
That's in the letter that the person, you sent me the actual, I've stopped the clock actually, because I've been interrupted. You sent me the letter of complaint.
If you're going to speak to council, you need to
And
actually make truthful statements.
in
So
that-
you can continue, but please don't make untruthful statements.
Well, I'll circulate that letter to everyone tomorrow. You sent it to me and it said that they had afternoon tea with you and that you gave advice.
No, I didn't give any advice.
And the person has given me that advice who was at the meeting.
Okay, well, I disagree. So,
Okay, all right.
and you weren't there, so you wouldn't know.
Sorry?
You weren't there, so.
No,
with all
but
due
someone
respect.
was who told me that. But it's true that you had afternoon tea with them. That's in the statement of complaint, that you had an afternoon tea with them.
So again,
Yeah.
if you could continue, but
Sure.
please don't make untruthful
No,
statements.
I'm not making untruthful statements, ma'am.
Yes, you are. So I'm just raising that.
Are you saying you didn't have afternoon tea with them?
I did have afternoon tea, but I didn't provide any advice. No advice was provided.
Okay, contested issue. On the 9th of December, Mayor Redmond writes to me and says this, a complaint's been lodged. I provide you with a copy of the complaint where the afternoon tea is mentioned. She advises of the anonymous of the complainant, anonymity, advises that mediation will not be offered, but advises that she has reviewed the complaint and determined to resolve the matter internally and invites me to give her a statement by the 15th of January. I give a statement by the 15th of January in my defence, and on the 27th of May, Mayor Redmond sends me the final investigation report, and that's the first time I knew that it was sent off to the lawyers. I was not notified it was going to be outsourced to lawyers. I was never invited to provide a formal statement to the investigator, and a provisional report was never provided to me in contradiction to the Town of Gorna complaints handling procedure. I was totally blindsided. The report, the attachment that you have in the report is different to the one that I was given by the mayor, and point 39 is different in your report. And if you read point 39, you might have thought I had a problem in the officer's report. Officer's report point 39 is not the point 39 that I was given in the final document. It has been doctored and is not the one given to me by the mayor or by the lawyers. I'll read out what 39 says and you check on yours. 39 says this, however, we do provide the recommendation that Councillor Tooley exercises greater care in the specific phrasing he chooses in debates and understand that continued instances of this type of behaviour may indeed constitute a breach of the code, despite the fact that we have found in this instance no breach occurred. The other wording is not in this final document. I have no doubt that Councillor Koch will pick up on this one that's in your report as if to say, I've got it wrong. And what does it essentially say? Councillor Tooley, you weren't found guilty of speeding, and if you continue to not be found guilty of speeding, you might be in trouble. What an absolute nonsense. Why didn't Mr. and Nat authorize Kate Layton to put this statement in? Because this is here at item number 36. There is nothing inherently disrespectful in the comments that have been made by or complained about. We do not consider that there is anything derogatory stated by Councillor Tooley in the comments complained about or otherwise discriminatory at all. And it goes on in points 37 and 38 to say no guilt at all. And yet we have here a mayor who could have played this down, who could have done it internally, but instead it cost the ratepayers $2,022 to prove me innocent of everything. You now have a report that has a point 39 that doesn't even exist.
CEO,
that doesn't have
CEO
point.
is quite aggrieved with what's being said.
Mr. Tooley is suggesting that the documentation that's presented in the agenda is not correct. What I've presented for the purpose of the agenda is the information that we've received from the independent investigator. And so the process that's being followed is consistent with that independent advice. So if Mr. Tooley can just proceed to finalise the statement, that'll be appreciated, I think.
So if you could wrap it up, please.
I will
Tooley.
circulate to the Bunyip tonight the copy of the final report that you sent me, Mayor Redmond, that shows the wording of 39. Something has happened to have 39 doctored by that investigator, and I have never been told about it. The first time I, as the person complained about, has ever seen that wording is when it's listed in your report, and Mr. Anat facilitates the bringing out of that one phrase, not one of the other phrases that totally exonerates me. What is the motive? to spend ratepayer money, $2,022, to try and take a cheap shot to see if we can somehow
I'd
have a go
ask
at
you not
Councillor
to
Tooley.
yell and-
Absolutely appalling
So
behaviour
I think you've just
and an
stepped over
appalling
the line,
waste of ratepayer
and
money.
I'd ask you to
And I
sit
will
down.
circulate this document to
If
you. You
could-
can see
if
the
you could move
original that
away
Mayor
from the
Redmond sent to me.
microphone, Mr. Tooley, and sit
I'll
down,
do it now
please,
as we're
and calm
speaking.
down, please. Thank you. You're not, you're yelling. So if you can just calm down, otherwise you will be asked to leave. Otherwise you will be asked to leave. If you could just calm down, take a deep breath, and I think you'll be fine. Thank you. Okay, now, CEO, do you want to make a statement?
Yes, through the chair, if I could. I put to you that there was clear intent relative to Mr. Tooley's comments on the night of that meeting. There was direct influence by Mr. Tooley in his comments that were derogatory towards the administration. In a legal context, the need for a higher threshold to then result in a penalty or sanction has not been reached, and that's what the findings have been. However, notwithstanding the legal threshold not being reached, I put to you members that a decency threshold has definitely been breached. To suggest that staff, executive staff or otherwise, who do not live in the area, do not care or do not understand the community or issues we are dealing with is wrong. For then Councillor Tooley, at that point, got it wrong when he made these comments regarding a report that was in fact written by a senior member of our team who is in fact a local resident. This is not keeping the administration accountable, it's working against the administration. Mr. Tooley's consistent, unfounded and public criticism of staff includes, for example, when Pioneer Park was vandalised with turf being poisoned. The then Councillor Tooley immediately sought to make political mileage of the matter and sent a letter to the local paper, who then published a story. I put to you this affected the community's confidence in council. The administration presented proof that it was not staff, but an act of vandalism. The police got involved. Information was presented to all members, but no apology from then Councillor Tooley. In closing, I'll reference the investigation report where it states continued instances of this type of conduct may indeed constitute a breach of the code.
And it's not in the original report sent to me. You're lying.
Thank you.
What you
Right.
just said has no relevance whatsoever.
So I'm going to move to item 5. I'm going to move to item 5. Is there anyone who wishes to declare an interest in any item that we're discussing on the agenda tonight? Councillor Koch.
Look, I'll be declaring one of the items in the confidential section of the meeting. Do you want me to mention that now or wait till a confidential?
We have the confidential reports in the public agenda. Which one is it? Is it?
It's 19.2.
Yep.
It's 19.2 James Street tree matter. So I'll be declaring a conflict when that comes.
Okay, we'll deal with that when we get to that matter, Councillor Koch.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other members wish to declare a conflict in any of the matters that we're discussing tonight? No? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We have no agenda items, we have no petitions, confirmation minutes, councillors. Ordinary council meeting on the 24th of August. You happy to move that way, Councillor Goldstone? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we will move on to our decision reports. With the agenda, this is the first time that we've had decision reports and also information reports, and that's as a result of our policy being changed to allow us to split, which means that information reports, as per our policy, our new policy, can be moved en bloc if council chooses. So we'll move to 9.1, and I'm on page 5 of the agenda. How do you wish to proceed, council? Councillor Little, you've got your hand up. Do you wish to speak, Paul? Yep.
Yeah, yes, Your Worship. It's just a noting. I'll notice, I'll take in reference tonight what the representative from the squash people said, but like it's been stated before, all these leases are with the actual main leaseholder, and in regards to South Gawler, they sublease to netball, cricket as well, and they have had issues with the squash club for many years in relation to usage. So it's only a noting report. I think it allows us to visit it again before November if some members wish to put some input into it. But other than that, I think we just should do the officer's recommendation as is.
Do I have a seconder, councillor Vallelonga? Do you wish to second? No. Do I have a seconder for this particular? Do you wish to second? Oh, sorry. Councillor Vallelonga is seconding the motion. Is that correct, Jim? Yeah. Do you wish to speak at all? No. Okay. Thank you. Open it up to the floor. Councillor Koch.
Look, I'm just a bit confused. Are we agreeing that, for example, for the Gawler South Football Club, that we're just going to move ahead and just negotiate with Gawler South and not include the Squash Club?
That's what this recommendation
yes, okay.
is.
Well,
they're talking about the lessees.
Yeah, so I can't support that because I'm actually looking at the attachments. The first attachment we've got on page 4 of 617, and you, in the introduction, we're talking about the founding principles. Council has a role in providing facilities for community and recreational activities to strengthen communities and encourage healthy lifestyles. That's what the squash does. Council has a responsibility to ensure the optimum use of sporting facilities and is committed to the principles of access and equity for all members of the community. When I look at what's happening there, I think those two founding principles have not been abided to. I'm not happy with the fact that we've got one sporting group who sounds like they've accepted money from another group for over a number of years. We're happy to have them there, so that was a mutual agreement. They were there for a lot of years. Then all of a sudden, oh, we're going to kick you out. I don't think that's right, and I don't think that is making optimum use of the sporting facilities. Well, from my calculations, they only want it on football days. That's only 8 days a year, I assume, on the game days. They've had 8 home games and maybe one finals game. Well, they actually don't have finals games anymore. Well, they probably do. So that's 9 days out of the whole year. And so you've got something like 356 days that it's not being used, and it can be used by the squash people. So I'm just concerned that if we pass this, we're closing the door on the squash to actually use that facility. So I'm not happy to support this, and I hope others would not be happy to support this, and we'll change somehow that we actually include the squash court, the squash club in the negotiations, because they're there for 556 days compared to 9 days. Thank you. So I'll be voting against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter? Councillor Shanks and then Councillor Hughes.
I just had a question through you, Mayor, if I could. And it might go to Chris. He did say the leasee, the way that it works is obviously we're dealing directly with the main tenant, which is the football club, and the squash are not, I guess, big enough to take on the full lease. If there was some sort of shared agreement, what does that actually look like, and how do we assist in facilitating that conversation? Because listening to Chris before, he made the point that you know, it is in our remit to facilitate that. So how do we facilitate a conversation? Because I think there's a whole bunch of he said, she said going on that we probably need to get in front of before the actual lease.
The lease runs out at the end of the year, doesn't it, Chris?
It does, yes.
Yeah. We are the landlord.
Yeah.
So we can dictate who, you know, who's in the negotiation. I don't altogether agree with Chris that it's outside of council's control to not have. These leases are shared leases, shared facilities leases. So there is capacity to have other groups such as netball, such as cricket, in these shared leases. So I think council has a role. I think there needs to be further discussion on what that looks like and the role of council, but certainly council is the landlord.
So I guess it's just a process. Like, what's the process that makes this as quick and easy as possible? Because up until now, we keep on having conflicted opinions brought to us.
There was a motion that I think Councillor Davies put up that was lost, that actually looked at that process, I believe. So certainly when a motion is lost, the motion can always be put up again. So there's that opportunity to put up a motion on notice. It is a long-term issue. It's been going on since 1975, when South Gawler moved to the Elder Rigs space, because they used to train at the Gawler Central Oval, and their club rooms was the elderly centre. So it has been going on for a long time, and I don't think it's an easy issue to solve very quickly. And there is constrained space by South Gawler Football Club, so there's lots of challenges on both sides. And certainly there's been lots of discussion, hasn't there, CEO, with both clubs. But certainly council can have a role, but I would advise that we tread carefully and diplomatically in this space. So I haven't got a complete answer for you.
No, that's right. Am I able to speak to it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, the way that this sits, I'm happy to support the way that it sits, and because it doesn't rule out the conversations that can still happen. I am a little bit, I think I've said this before, but I'm a little bit disappointed to be brought in at the end of this conversation. We've heard tonight when the Mayor said this is a historic issue. We've heard conflicting views where the wounding of the sports club that happened back in 2017 by losing a court was disabling to a sporting club here, yet we find out in the last minutes when a lease is about to be renewed. It's a frustrating turn of events to be a councillor that is tied to these sporting clubs in one way or another, but try to look at this in a diplomatic sense, because I have people that I do trust giving me conflicting views, and I hear tonight some advice that it doesn't quite align. So it does worry me a little bit, but the way that this report sits, it does continue on with the way that the leases are usually rolled out across our sporting clubs. I would like to see that conversation facilitated, and I'd like to see business plans. I'd like to see some facts and some figures and actually put forward, because to date, I haven't seen that to be able to assist in helping one club or the other. So I'm happy to support this report, but I do note that time is running out to be able to substantially give me something that is going to help save or not save a club as it sits.
I might go to Councillor Hughes next. He had his hand up, and then I think Councillor Ballalonga wanted to speak, and then I think Councillor Fraser, in that order.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I was thinking probably similar to the previous motion that was lost, whether we can actually have a motion without notice. It was mentioned about investigating ways to assist the Gawler South Football Club to establish alternative toilets other than using the Gawler Squash Courts facility, or even just another motion to actually assist the two clubs. We've done this before with the Carbetha Reserve, where the clubs there were struggling, and staff did a fantastic job of actually getting all those clubs to be financially sustainable and work together. would you be willing to take a motion without notice at the end of the
Well, I
meeting?
haven't got the wording and I'm inclined to accept only a motion on notice. I think it gives people more time to consider that.
Okay.
I think that if Councillor Hughes, if this goes through, it's probably better off being a motion on notice.
Right. Yeah, can I then speak to this motion?
Certainly can.
So yeah, I just do have concerns that we are excluding a club with even adopting these policies. I do know we can always change things as being the landlord, but I think there has to be a fair reason process. It's nearly October, and then it'll be November. So we've only got a month, so it's only going to be a very short window, I think, to actually work on this. So I am concerned that there isn't much of a time frame for us to actually get these reports or get this information through council and to actually assist these club, especially the squash club. And yeah, the squash courts are a purpose-built facility to turn them into toilets that will be used for maybe a couple of years. Gawler South Club are talking about shifting all the time as well. It's quite concerning. So I do think we are running out of time, as Councillor Shanks has also mentioned as well. So that's why I do think it'd be good to get a motion without notice on this issue. But yeah, agree, it's a complex matter as well, but I think we are running out of time as well. But it does make it difficult to actually want to agree with the officer's recommendation on adopting these 3 policies. It's not just a noting report, it's actually adopting these 3 policies as well. So just raise that to all the other members.
Thank you. Before I go any further, there is an amendment that needs to happen with one of these policies, and that is it's on page 7 of our attachments. If you go to page 7 of our attachments, and it's to do with asbestos checks. Council, because we own the buildings in this particular policy, council is to arrange for the asbestos checks. So there should be a slight amendment. So in our papers, we have in the middle column, we have blue text, which says the lessee is to maintain and provide copies of inspection reports. That's to be removed, and council to arrange. The line is to be removed, and it comes back into being real text, I guess, because we own the building. It's our responsibility under the Act. So that was raised just before. I think that got that right. Got that right, Chris? Yep. So we might put in that. So this is the exclusive right of possession. Is that the first one, Chris? That's the, yeah. Is that actually in the recommendation? Notes the ground, up there, okay. And associated policies as amended? Associated policies as amended. So Chris, if you can just add in point 1, after associated policies, put as amended, if you can. No, associated policies, not after report, after associated policies as amended, in brackets, probably in brackets. And then that makes sense, I think. Okay, so that's that, thank you. So who was next? I think Councillor Vallelonga, you were next. There you go.
Yeah, I'd just like to, I agree with Councillor Shanks. I'll be voting with this because yeah, it's only got the football club will be talking to the squash club, so we think. But on this subject, while we're talking about it, I'm not sure where we stand, but I like to put in a motion. Now, if I don't know where I put the motion up now, and the Gawler South Football Club is probably the worst football ground that we have. You know, you've got the Centrals, which is a beautiful club, and then you've got the Williston. But Gawler South is too small. I have had a slight little chat with the CEO about it. Nothing formal. There has been talk, Councillor Hughes has brought it up, about moving the club. And a lot of people think that's a great idea. How can we investigate this because that piece of land is really not big enough anymore. So we need to move that club somewhere and build better facilities. I know that's going to cost money, but we need to investigate that. How can, you know, I like to put my thoughts into that, and I like everyone to put their thoughts into it too. And I've got some ideas. I don't want to bring them up now, but I think it's a great idea for the future for that club and for, you know, all the clubs too.
That would definitely be a motion on notice, not a motion without notice.
Okay, can I bring that up then on the motion after?
Not tonight, but you can, I won't accept a motion like that. I think that's quite a significant
Okay, well, I'll do that.
cost.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, Mayor, yeah.
But certainly maybe if you work with the CEO to come up with some appropriate wording, and then you could put up a motion on notice at the next meeting. Okay. Right now, Councillor Fraser, I think you were next.
Yes, I'll be voting for this because this is really just the lease. It's not it's a shared facility. It's up to the football club to then have the discussions with the people that they're sharing with the cricket club and so forth. It would be really good if some sort of arrangement could come with the squash court. I think there's a lot of bridges to go over there, but it would be really good. But voting for this is not going to alter any of that. That can still happen. I agree with what Councillor Vallelonga said about the South Football Club and their grounds, but I think South themselves have been, many years have been looking to go somewhere else. It's just a matter of what can come up, what's around. But I know that South themselves have been looking for many years, probably 10, 12 years they've been looking. So yeah, so that can still also be on the cards, but that's not a short-term thing at all.
Any other speakers? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, well, look, first, I'm happy to take my motion from previous meeting and put it up again next meeting. We can have that discussion again. It's sort of a separate decision, but it's also something where our policies are affecting our ability to, in general terms, you know, safeguard smaller clubs or this kind of thing. When issues crop up with a larger leaseholder, when what we're expecting from them is actually that, you know, 4 or 5 clubs coexist, and then we don't have the options within the policies to address that effectively. I think maybe it would be best to have the policies come back with more options around flexibility for that kind of thing, because this is not just specifically about the squash courts. This is something about our policies and the way that we arrange our leases. So I'm happy to look at it on a more structural level, I guess. So I would be voting against this, and then if it didn't pass, maybe changing point 3 to one that was about reviewing policies in light of safeguards.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Little, you happy for me to put, you wish to speak? Certainly.
Yeah, it's been a very good discussion, councillors. I agree with some points from both sides, but the issue is that they have tried for years to deal with squash financially, and it's just not viable. If you gave the squash a separate lease for them to hold that building, they wouldn't take it on because the power alone does not, their power alone does not cover the cost that they pay back to the club. There's more money spent on electricity there than what the South Football Club gets in fees from the squash club. It's not the squash club's fault, because when I used to play there in the 80s, we had 100 members. This now declined to such a degree, it's 20 to 30. And you can't expect that those 20 or 30 to carry the burden of electricity, even though South's putting in solar systems and stuff like that. And South have tried. I was a bit surprised when he said that they presented checks that haven't been cleared. That's not the information I've had when I've had meetings with both parties. So I'm not doubting his word, because the man seems quite sincere. But this is, like I said before, is only a noting report. It gives us an option to say to South, like, we want to get together. Is there a way that you can work with the squash court club and stay there? So I would urge members to pass this recommendation at this present moment. Thank you.
I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? It is carried. Thank you. Right, moving on to 9.2, Greater Adelaide Cycleway. Now, Mr. Delena, you've been busy printing out bits and pieces. Sam, do you want to just quickly provide elected members with what you've provided them in front of them tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, certainly we've been pushing our consultants and challenging them. It's a very difficult environment at the moment with the way the market is and the workload on various consultancies. There has been some minor changes, or some changes to the drawings that were presented as part of the agenda. They've been circulated last night. Hard copies available to review now, and an email was provided just summarising those changes. Mayor, did you want me to talk about the summary of changes? The dot point, that dot
well,
point.
You did circulate them, so everybody
Okay.
have seen them. Probably
and
talk about this
yes.
one that we haven't seen.
And in terms of tabling tonight, when I circulated an email on Friday, we're working on some more community-friendly documents that would be circulated. Well, effectively, these are the engagement plans that are based on the 50% design that's part of the agenda. So this is just effectively a more visually pleasing, easier to understand version, effectively representing what was on the 50% design as amended per se. And that's representative of the original alignment that was endorsed by council as part of the grant application going back in 2020.
Sam, for that. So Chris, they will be included in the minutes, will be tabled. I beg your pardon? So given that they've been tabled, so this is the updated one, and this is the engagement, what's this? The user-friendly engagement sort of brochure.
It's the plans that we use for engagement, community engagement. Yep.
So what I would suggest is when we come to the motion that we include these in that they are tabled. Okay, so that is the 50% updated 50% design and proposed treatments, community engagement information. Yep. If you can, thank you, Chris. You're already onto it, aren't you? Well done. Okay. Yes, Councillor Kosh, are you happy to move the motion? I might see if I can. If there's anyone who's wishing to move, are you happy to move the motion? Do I have a seconder? So do you wish to speak? And then I'll take your question.
Yeah, no, I think the way the layout and everything else makes a lot of sense. There is a fair bit of consultation. It's really good that Sam sort of pointed out the user-friendly versions. And it does sort of take a bit of knowledge to get around Gawler safely on a bicycle. I still fall off, but it's my own fault. But you do have to work with the traffic and the road surfaces and everything else. And I think the way through Reed is a smart move and works well. I think, Joe, that there will be some suggestions from our community as well, hopefully, as well, that might be helpful. And also, Joe, it's the connection with the Barossa, which Joe has been crying out for a long time, which was supposed to be the very first bit that was delivered, that has still never been delivered. So if we can get that commitment from Barossa Council to get that underway as soon as possible, I think a lot of people in our community will be really happy as well. But it is a really big bicycle way. You can go basically to Anguston and to Port Adelaide. It is probably one of the longest bicycle ways in South Australia. It's just not well connected in parts, which makes it confusing. Needs, as mentioned in the report, good wayfinding, good signage and information. But there is a couple of choke points at different places that cyclists know about. But yeah, the more information that's out there and the community gets on board, that includes all road users, with cars and everything else as well. I think the more it's going to be used by the community and families and everyone else as well. So I think this is a really good way to go.
So just on that point that Councillor Hughes made with the Barossa Council and Milroy Lane, I know they've got funding. Are they going to deliver it? Because they didn't last time when they had funding.
Through you, Mayor. I do reference in the report a section that refers to where they're at the moment. They actually are out to market to select tenderers, got money in the budget and are ready to move forward. So their intent is to actually commence that work in the coming month or so.
Okay, that's fantastic. And now the seconder was Councillor Fraser, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Koch.
I'd just like to speak about the detail of the map. I think it's really good. A lot of work gone into it. I think it explains things. I think the community will be able to follow that fairly well. So it's really good.
Thank you, Councillor Koch.
I've actually got a question about the alignment.
Yes.
Through you to Mr. Delina. In this map, it talks about the alignment along Sunnydale Avenue, Carlton Road. I thought the alignment was along the railway line. This is this map.
Just if we could just.
This map, first one. This one. Let's go back one, whatever.
Well, my first one's Eucalypt Drive.
No. It's Sunnydale Avenue, Carlton Road to Barossa Trail. That's not where the alignment was. The first page there.
That's not what I've got.
Yeah.
Oh.
On the back.
It's on the back.
Yeah.
So. Oh. No, it goes down Milroy Lane. So that's wrong.
That's wrong. Good.
That was a good pick up, wasn't it? So that's not right. It goes down Milroy Lane along the railway line. Goes down, yeah. So, okay, what do you want to do about that, Sam?
If we could just add as amended.
As amended, because that'll go straight.
Maybe the notes, the table documents as amended.
Yeah. Is that our error?
I must admit, I didn't notice it myself. These were hot off the press today.
Yeah,
But it's an extension of the dotted line at the Barossa Valley Way.
Let's hope SA Water actually does a better job on Sunnydale Drive than they did on Redbanks Road, because it's appalling on Redbanks Road. And I'm watching Sunnydale Drive with great interest. And I'm worried that it will end up the same way as Redbanks. So let's hope not.
I just want to clarify that it would it's only about 1.8 kilometres between Anne Milroy and Sunnydale Avenue. So it's definitely going down the railway line.
Yeah.
As amended.
So we've put as amended there, and Sam will, I'm sure will update that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, elected members, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
I'm glad you brought up the message about the Barossa Council, because Barossa Council didn't bring it in the Gawler as they were originally. So I'm glad that something happened in that way. Also want to applaud the way it's all put together. But cost-wise and time-wise, is there any, the actual overall cost? Because I've just got new glasses and I'm still not seeing push bikes around. So I'd just like to know who's going to use them. But without a doubt, I applaud the people that have put this information together, but I'd like to know what is the overall cost and when is the time limit of when this is going to happen.
I'll refer to Mr. Delena for the response. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. The overall project value, including ourselves and the Barossa, is $1.8 million. In terms of the split itself, I'll just go to the financial implications part of the report, which should have this. So bear with me, I'm getting there. Effectively, the contribution from the town of Gawler is 573,000. The contribution from the Barossa is 564,000, and the regional growth fund is 678. So effectively, I actually haven't got the combined total for the town of Gawler, but I believe it's upwards of $800,000 in terms of our split from the, if you were the total project value per se, with the regional growth fund and our council's contribution.
And the milestones are on page 13 of the report. And you were saying before that they're on, once the tender is chosen, it'll be full steam ahead.
Yeah, so they're committed to progressing. They're, like I said, they're out to market. They've got a design. They've actually gone out and actually did a design where they were initially going to doing a design and construct. So, you know, they've got money in the budget and they're committed to progressing.
So
We met with them recently.
Quite an exciting project, I think. Okay. Any other council Koch?
Yeah, now that that's sorted out, I'm happy. I think it's a really good design. It takes people off the roads, which is very important. And I quite like the connection to High Street and the utilisation of the pedestrian crossing on Lindop Road, because that brings all that into play now, which is great. What this will do, especially say from here to Lindop, it brings in play a very safe trail for safe families to use. And that's really important. So people will be able to get off the train, say at Gawler Central, jump on their bikes and ride all the way out to Lindop very, very safely. And I think that's actually going to bring tourists to Gawler, because we need to, at the Gawler Business Development Board Group this morning, we talked about activating Gawler and doing things that would bring people to Gawler. And this is going to be one of the things that will bring people to Gawler to cycle, because Gawler is actually is a fantastic cycling hub, a place for a cycling hub, because you can go into the Barossa, to the north, to the south, out into the plains. It's a really good venue to start. So this trail will actually connect all those different areas up. So it's fantastic. Now it is only 1.8 kilometres from Anne Milroy to Sunnydale, and that was the last bit left in about 120 kilometres of cycling trails. So this is quite a momentous bit that's going in. It's like the Darien Gap. It's a little bit that needs to go in, and that will solve that connect that whole area up. So I'm very happy that this is going to go ahead, and I'm very happy to support it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Hughes, are you happy for me to put the motion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. .3 on page 18.
So I'm suggesting the first option.
Option one.
Option one.
So, yep.
So everything before the or.
Yep.
And basically, look, this is just, for me, this is something that letting it just lay there and not dealing with it for a long time is sort of like it's like a leaky pipe or something over the, we'll just gradually over the next, 4 or 5 years, it will lay there and we'll spend over $100,000 on it in that time. And so the most efficient way to me is to either drop the app or entirely, or get a review going, and those are sort of, I think, the two options that that we've got between this and a motion on notice later. But look, I'm happy to review the app. I think this is something that, look, it hasn't been working. If it does stop working, people don't notice it for like a month because, well, there's no reason for community members or staff or anyone to check the app because it doesn't have its functions that we'd hoped for, and it hasn't had them for the last 3 years. So yeah, that's why I'm moving this motion.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Will you second it?
Yeah, look, members, you've seen my frustrations with this item over the months. I think this is long overdue. We did see some correspondence come today, and to be honest, it sort of has highlighted some of the holes in our knowledge, in my opinion, in this space. This app was great ideas, but not great follow through, in my opinion. We had an opportunity here, I think, and that's what I think we all as elected members jumped at when it was first presented to us in 2019. It hasn't been realised. We haven't done half the things that we were told were going to happen. And it's been a disappointing turn of events. Now, there is no shame to admit that we don't have the expertise needed internally to be able to manage the app the way that we should. As Cody pointed out, there are faults on the app that go unnoticed, and they have been for some time. And there are breaches that potentially there's on a contractual level that we've missed opportunity here. So I think this is the only way forward. It's frustrating that this is the only way forward, but if we don't do this, I think we'll just keep on wasting good money on an asset that is not performing at all. So look, I hope we support this because it is the logical way forward. Because again, in this room and what data we've got back, we don't have the knowledge that we need. So it's time to outsource that. Everything else aside, we need to do that. So I plead with members to follow this through. I know we had good support to get it to this stage when I moved the motion originally. And here we are. And I do actually thank staff for turning this report around quickly. So yeah, I plead with members to apply some logic here and let's get some professional advice.
Any other discussion? Councillor Goldstone?
I'll probably support the motion, but sort of questioning whether the whole thing about deactivating the app and whether it's needed, whether it's value for money. I mean, when you look at the report, and it talks about only 34 businesses after 2 or 3 years taking the app up. And also the number of active devices that remain registered to it. You sort of got to ask yourself the question, is the whole exercise worth it? Or do you spend more money on it? So given the advice that Henry gave out today as well, sort of, be questioning whether we should be doing anything or just scrub it. Now, I don't know if that, as I said, I'll probably vote for the motion, but yeah, I'd be quite to scrub it. So.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Davis, you happy for me to put the motion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried unanimously. Thank you. And that deals with that. And now we move to 9.4, community nominations for the Climate Emergency Working Group. Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to move this. I'm not going to repeat myself. It just gets me up and about, to be honest. Let's just move this. We're going to get 2 members back to where they should be. And they're going to help cross the finish line in a group that they committed their time and volunteered to. this is the right moral thing to do. And I hope we can get full support here and give this a unanimous to put this an end to the nonsense.
You seconding, Deputy Mayor? Do you wish to speak at all? Open it up to the full council question.
I just want a clarification over the issues that originally resulted in these two people standing down from this group. Has that been resolved?
CEO?
Through the chair, yes, it's been resolved in that the administration will be ensuring that the information presented to the working group is consistent with its terms of reference. And we won't be going beyond that relative to what was presented in good faith. And so that will ensure that the conflicts, the issues that were at play at the time won't reoccur, and also mindful that the terms of reference of the current working group is relative to the finalisation of the plan itself, and that's not too far away.
You want to speak to the motion? Yep.
Okay, I'll support that now, knowing that those checks and balances are now in place. Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, be happy for me to put the motion. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. .5. Happy to move that way, Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Goldstone. Any discussion? Councillor Shanks.
Sorry, I just had a question. Oh no, sorry, I'm jumping ahead here.
All good? Okay. Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Hughes, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we come to our information reports. We have a choice of moving this on block. Now, Councillor, if we do that, Councillor Kosh, you wanted to add something to the 10.4. No, not 10. Yeah, 10.4. Well, you could leave 0.4 and add those 4, and then that solves the problem of your motion on notice. And so I'll just explain that, and then we've got an opportunity to move it. We don't have to move it on block, but it gives us an opportunity to do so. Where is it? Local government, here it is. So A, B, C and D. You want that included into this? Well, I'm suggesting that we add A, B and C and D to this, because the notice on motion from Councillor Kosh is very similar to this. And A, B, C and D from his motion could be incorporated in this. So A, B, C and D from the notice of motion, which is 15.2, which Councillor Kosh put up, could be incorporated in 10.4 as an alternative motion. And then we could move it on block if we wanted to. All right, so we won't move it on block. We'll leave 10.4, and then I'll explain it more when we get to 10.4. Does that make sense? So we'll pull 10.4 out and we'll deal with that separately. Okay, so we have 10.1, 10.2 and 10.3 that we can potentially move. You happy to move 10.1, 2 and 3 on block? You happy to second? Any discussion? 10.1, Councillor Fraser and seconded by Councillor Koch. Any discussion? Councillor Goldstone.
I just want to make a comment on item 10.3. I really just want to acknowledge the achievements of Jack and the Environmental Services team for what they've been able to achieve during this difficult period of when whilst COVID has been in place. So I think that should be acknowledged.
Any other discussion? Councillor Shanks.
So just so I can get this new process first time doing this. So we have to move these items en bloc.
We are able to.
Yeah. Do we have to vote if we're happy to move them on block before we start talking to item 10.3, for example? Or how does that work? Because we haven't voted to talk to item 10.1, 10.2, 10.3 in our 3-minute window on one motion yet. So I'm just wondering, are we supposed to agree that yes, we're going to move it on block, and then
if we move it on block, it's a motion that all three are moved together.
And do we have to vote if we accept to move on block?
We don't have a separate motion. We have an opportunity. So these are information reports and they can be moved on block as per our policy. Our policy allows for information reports to be moved on block. Which means we can move them together as one motion.
Yeah.
So we've decided we're moving 10.1, 10.2 and 10.3. We're not moving 10.4 at this stage. We're doing that separately.
To pull it out, yeah. But we didn't decide. There was a conversation where Councillor Fraser did and seconded, but we didn't vote.
We haven't voted on it yet. We're voting on moving 10.1, 10.2 and 10.3, and it's been moved and seconded. So,
and we're just discussing if we agree. This is, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get it right.
We've moved, there's been a motion moved that we're moving 10.1,
10.2 and 10.3.
Yeah, and that's been moved and seconded.
But what I'm confused about is Councillor Goldstone spoke to 10.3.
He made a comment. He's allowed to. So you can make a comment about any of the items if you wish in your 3 minutes, if you wish. Yeah. Any of the items. Okay. As part of the debate. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, sort of. I think I'm sort of a bit confused on what we're voting on the screen to what the reports are telling us to do, but yeah, similar. I think I'm getting my head around it.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that the reports don't make it very clear, and I have raised it when I was looking at the agenda, and when I spoke with the CEO yesterday, I did raise that it needs to be more clear.
Yeah, because I see some efficiencies here, which I'm all for, but yeah. Look, I'll opt to then talk to 10.1 then, now, yes? Okay. Look, the Code of Conduct final report. This is just one of those other disappointing, in my opinion, outcomes. We now have another $2,000 that is going to be chalked up, in my opinion, to be a waste. We have now Mr. Tooley giving a conflicting evidence to the report, which only is going to exacerbate this whole thing that keeps on continuing on. It's discouraging. I just don't like seeing it this way. And I don't like the extra effort that was put in to bring up other events around a Pioneer Park thing. You know, if there was some behavioural or some complaints there, then follow the process. Lodge the complaint when it happened. You know, I feel like I keep on repeating myself over and over again. But the waste is clocking up. These Code of Conduct final reports, these lawyer fees and everything like that. If there was a staff member offended, which I'm really against, I think there was some missed opportunity here to resolve this internally. Approach the offender that I don't think was meaning to offend, because I was at that debate, and yes, there was some misspoken that could have been taken the other way, but I didn't take it that way. So it just seems that all this time, all this angst, it's just a waste. And now it's resulted in more waste of money. It's just, yeah, it's frustrating. But look, I don't see this changing any in the foreseeable future until some management tactics on how to deal with this change. So there's my comments on 10.1.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Fraser, you happy for me to put the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Thank you. Now we'll deal with 10.4, which is on page 52. So Councillor Koch, do you want to move, are you happy to move with those changes? A, B, C and D. Chris, have you popped them up? So just put them under 4A. Okay, so that a workshop is to be held to allow further on the which have taken effect and proposed to be phased, including but not exclusive of, including, just put including at the end of point 4. Thank you. With a double colon. There we go. Okay, are you happy? Is that what you?
Yes, I'd like to move that because I think these are big changes for the way we behave, the way we operate as a council. So I think it's important that we have a workshop. And I've got that any other because I think there's an issue around understanding conflict of interest, conflict. Just so we understand what the new regulations are, and we're across on it, so we're not getting tripped up, because that's something I think we seem to be getting tripped up a bit. I've found over the last year or so. So it'd be nice to clarify all that. So that's why I moved the motion. It's fortuitous that this report came in at the same time. So we're obviously thinking about the same thing at the same time. So that's good. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for this motion, Councillor Goldstone? Do you wish to speak at all? Any discussion? Councillor Shank?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this. I'm always for opening up a conversation, especially if there's some changes that we need to get over. There was one item that I did note that I found quite relevant. Motions are to be submitted 7 days before. I'm actually for that because you've seen some frustrations as of late. Hopefully that curbs some of that. And allows both parties to have it a bit longer because we're all busy. So yeah, look, I can support the motion as it sits, and that was actually going to be my question through you, Chair, to Councillor Koch, because I did see his motion coming up, and I was wondering about the double up. So yeah, combining them does make sense.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I saw also something that sort of jumped out at me was the constructive working relationships with staff and councillors. And as councillors, we do have to work together to get effective outcomes. So I think that's really quite positive, and it's reinforced through a number of times throughout the document from the mayor to councillors and to the staff as well. So I think that's quite a positive statement and can be quite powerful. So I think that's quite good.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Koshy, happy to be. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. That deals with the information reports. So now we're moving on to recommendations from committees, and I'm on page 57 of the agenda. No, I did ask that. There are some noting motions, as you will see on the front page, or the front page of the first recommendations from the Gawler Heritage Collection Committee. So these are noting motions, 11.1. Happy to move that way, Councillor Hughes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Koch. Any discussion? Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now I'm over the page down to Gawler Youth Advisory Committee meeting. So we've got just 11.2, I'll do that first. Motions for noting. Are you happy to move that way, councillor Shanks? I'll get a seconder. You have a second, councillor Davies. You've got the floor, councillor Shanks.
Yeah, just quickly, the youth advisory members, the questions that I've got coming through and the reports they're requesting are actually fantastic. The protection of the heritage properties was one of our members that Erin and her team were able to provide the information back, and yeah, it definitely answered some questions, and I'm sure inspired some more. This is the sort of stuff that I do commend staff for just getting around the Youth Advisory Committee and helping them and assisting them on the questions they're asking and what reports are available for them to look at, and then compiling it and giving it back in such a way and walking it through with them. So yeah, I just wanted to just really highlight that, and yeah, we're seeing a lot of good come through the Youth Advisory Committee at the moment, and I'm sure we'll only grow. So yeah, I just wanted to commend that again.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 11.2.1. Happy to move that way, councillor Shanks. Thank you. Seconded by councillor Davies. Question?
Through the chair, I just want to know were there any conversations with the, say, the Apex Club about these events before they were decided? Because the Apex Club were doing, the carols, and the funds from the carols is now doing this. So how's the interaction been with the Apex Club?
Aaron, you can provide a response. Thank you.
Through the chair, I believe Councillor Koch is talking about recommendations for the CCS, which is a future item in the agenda.
Youth development.
Well, where am I?
We're talking about the report.
Oh, I'm actually looking
I'm
at
on page
CCS, sorry.
58. Okay.
Gone too far.
Thank you. We'll wait for that. We've got a mover and a second. Any other discussion? If not, we'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Appointment of members. Happy to move that way. Councillor Davies, seconder. Councillor Fraser, any discussion?
Yeah, just to say that it's good that we've been able to fill up the Youth Advisory Committee again, back up to its max capacity. Out of the three new members, Jade is someone who's been on before and came to the end of her term, and the other two are new members of the community who've just joined to fill some spots that were vacated over the course of the year. So it's good that we're able to keep it full and full of fresh faces.
There's no further discussion. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we're moving on to 11.2.3. Councillor Shanks, are you happy to move that one? Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies.
Look, I think this particular motion just requires a little bit of a shout out to Isaac Solomon. He's been working very closely, and the working group, just with the VORT testing and really following it through. The report that he presented to the Youth Advisory Council Committee, I was actually really impressed with. He tabled his survey results, his graphics, his report, his assessment of the numbers he got were very professionally done. And look, I urge all councillors to have a bit of a read, because this is a youth advisory member that's doing this for his generation, with the support of the working group. And I think it really just needs that special mention, because yeah, a lot of work has happened, and it just including that report on the Town of Gawler website is just a very good thing to be doing to support, again, a very active youth member. And so, yeah, just a special mention there to Isaac and the team.
Councillor Cox, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm actually going to raise some concerns about the report. I'm concerned that it will potentially go onto the onto our webpage and be basically, I suppose, endorsed by the council as something that we agree with. I'm not sure, when I've read it, I'm not sure whether it's a balanced report and it's balanced views. It seems to be a bit skewed in one direction. It may, for example, it makes quite political statements about privatisation, which I think are normally a report that we have on our webpage that we endorse is more balanced. I think some of the comments that he's included, I think, are a bit inappropriate. Some of the things that have said there, although that's what people said, but you know, you may have been able to balance that out a little bit. I'm just concerned about the status of the report. Does this mean that it is now an adopted report of council? Which, you know, I find if it is, I'm a bit concerned, because usually we have reports that come through, you know, officers and go through a whole range of steps. But this one may just all of a sudden have come in and all of a sudden it's an endorsed position for council. And I had some other issues as well, but I mean, I personally would like to defer this motion and get the, I don't know whether the CEO of administration have actually read the report and made any comments, but I would prefer to, if that could happen, and make sure that there's nothing in there that may be of risk to our council. Anything that's said in there that may be a risk. We've got an audit committee and we're talking about risk. There might be something, when I read it, I feel a bit, some risky things in there, and I'm just concerned that, you know, although you know, Mr. Solomon's put it together, I'm not overly happy right this moment to adopt it as a, you know, as a report that's going to go on our website and be broadcast, you know, worldwide, and then all these other things that are required, you know, meetings with ministers, etc., etc., etc. I think we need to step back and think about this a little bit. You know, I applaud him for all the work he's done, but I'm just concerned about the content and the risk to our council.
So you've got a question for staff about?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd like to see it deferred, if I could, and then staff to review it and just see whether it's...
My assumption is staff have reviewed it, because it wouldn't have come up to council without staff reviewing it. Have staff reviewed the report? Erin?
Through the chair, yes, we have reviewed the report. However, it's important to note it's not an endorsed publication of council. It is the findings from the subcommittee's report. So while we made some suggestions to Isaac about some changes, essentially it's not administration's report. So whether or not he took those on board or not was really up to the subcommittee. So we haven't made those changes. We haven't asked them, directed them to make changes, because it is just the findings of their report. So if council prefer us to do that process, then we can, but we've really taken a bit of a hands-off approach and let the young people really find their way in this space. I guess from my perspective, I don't see it as an endorsed plan of council at all. It's simply the findings from the work that they've done.
Through to the chair, the reason I'm concerned is that it's requesting that the mayor then uses this document with a meeting with the Minister of Transport. So it's actually saying that, you know, we want this council to basically accept the findings of that report and take it to the minister. I think that's a little step too far. Yes, you can have a report, that's fine, but you're actually asking this council now to basically adopt that report and take it to a minister as our basically our position. That's what it's essentially what it's saying, because that's, you know, in that motion. And I think that to me is a step too far. And, you know, I would seriously like to, you know, think about this before we just adopt it.
Okay. Well, I think staff have provided a response. They've let the young people run with this. That's what I've heard. Okay. So, Councillor Hughes, you've got your hand up.
Just a question to the chair about whether there will be some sort of disclaimer saying it's not endorsed by council, the statement.
Well,
because-
what it says in point 2 is it says request the mayor write to the Minister for Transport requesting a meeting to discuss the findings. So I'm assuming the findings or the report will be attached to the letter, because otherwise they won't know what we're talking about. So that will be attached. And I would think there would be an assumption that it is a council report because the mayor sent it.
Yeah, I think we actually need, because in the past we've, especially the VORT testing is a big issue for our town. And there are some issues, but we have tried to balance that out and actually work with the minister. So I'm even thinking that I agree with deferring it, or actually getting another report to sort of have a balanced conversation with the minister. I think it's probably good that the youth raise their issues, but we also, as a council, have a responsibility to be responsible.
If you want my opinion, my personal opinion is if you send a report that states you want to privatise, it is a political statement, because that's a clear delineation with the government. That's a Labor Party position. So I suspect you might not get very far with the minister but look, it's up to council what they want to do. I'm just the conduit, so. But I would think that you'd write to the minister. I certainly think there needs to be another letter written to the minister. I don't think that's unreasonable. However, requesting a meeting to discuss transport issues for youth in Gawler, so we could probably change that a little bit, and you could use the report and take out elements of importance in the report findings. I think that might actually be a better way forward. You could still have your report on the website. You could still promote it on the social media pages. But if you're dealing with the minister, I think you need to be a little bit diplomatic, and I think that might be so. Requesting a meeting to discuss transport issues for youth in Gawler might be a better way. So I don't know if the mover and seconder are happy to just slightly change that wording. Councillor Fraser.
My only problem with that this is the youth recommendation and we're going to change it. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but are we in a position to do that?
Yes, we are.
We are?
Yeah. We're the ultimate decision maker. This is a recommendation to council. Yeah. But it's up to the mover and seconder if they wish to. So what I'm suggesting in point 2, the ongoing transport issues for youth in Gawler. And you still cover, you can use the report, but you don't necessarily have to send the report to the minister. If we leave it as is, he'll get that report. We may not get a meeting. And you've sort of failed at the first hurdle. So you've still got the others that are unchanged. So the intent of I think, is still there. So the mover and seconder are happy with that? Yep, okay. All right, well, Chris, I think mover and seconder are happy with that. To discuss ongoing transport issues for young people in Gawler. So it's specific, yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Mayor Karen, I just can't put my head right around what the problem is here, and I certainly hear what Councillor Shaker said. But, the statement here, the decline of available transport services in Gawler, that is just rubbish. There's so many buses running around this town with nobody in them, it's not funny. Buses on demand are here. Youth can go from here to the Barossa Valley daily. None of this was here before. It's all here now. When I get in the doghouse at home, I go for a ride in the bus around Gawler. And the other day I said to the woman bus driver, who was a fantastic driver, by the way, that's not me. And she said to me, I said to her, how many young people do you get stop on Mr. De Lima's 20 bus stops all the way along Cheek Avenue that no one uses? How many young people do you get that hop on there and go somewhere around Gawler? hang on a minute, it's not cool to travel on a bus. That's what she said. I thought cool was something out of the fridge, but what I'm saying is that they're bad statements. I think the government's done pretty good. Not very often I praise them up and that, but we've got more buses running around this town empty. And I think there's got to be a lot more discussion on what Councillor Sheck said here and what's written in here, because there's more transport to get around. And you can ring a number and get a bus to pull up in front of your doorstep, not on one of Mr. Delander's bus stops.
So I've taken the bus from Adelaide, took me 2 hours to get home. It is appalling. It is absolutely appalling, the state of transport in Gawler. I completely agree with the youth. It is unreliable. It doesn't go anywhere. You can walk quicker to the main street than if you caught a bus. If you're able. If you're not able, well, you have to catch a bus and it'll take you an hour. It takes you 2 hours to get to Adelaide. Now there's the odd express that goes down the Northern Expressway, and that has been an improvement, but that took a lot of lobbying. It is completely appalling. We don't even know when the train's coming on. We haven't even been told. We haven't been given the decency and the respect to be told when that train is going to be up and running. It's appalling. And so I think this is a really good piece of work. However, I do hear some of the concerns from Councillor Koch about the balance. So we do need to be diplomatic with the government, even though I've just pretty much bagged the service. But I think it needs to be said what is actually happening in this town as it relates to transport. And then there's the small matter of the VORT. You know, why it was removed. We have not been given an adequate answer of why it was removed. And kids, you know, how do they go and get their license? You need a license when you live in Gawler. You need a car to get around because you haven't got a train. We don't know when that's coming on board, and we haven't got an adequate bus service. And don't even get started on the taxi service. Don't even get started on the access cabs. So, you know, it really is unacceptable. And I think that we do need to raise the issue over and over again. Anyway, I've said my piece. Councillor Fraser.
I think Councillor Sample's talking about getting around Gawler. The youth, Brian, they go to university, they've got part-time jobs. A lot of them are outside Gawler. They need the transport, they need the train back. Because, and as the Mayor said, the public transport from Gawler to Adelaide is atrocious. So that's the youth problem. I don't think the youth problem's getting around Gawler, it's getting out of Gawler to do the things that they do. And unfortunately, we don't have a university here. And, you know, we do have some part-time jobs, but a lot of them, they have to go, you know, Manapara or Elizabeth for their part-time jobs. So that's their problem.
Any other discussion? Councillor Shanks, you can close the debate.
Yeah, look, firstly, thanks for the discussion, members. It is good to give these sorts of items a bit of airtime and show the youth that we are deliberating on their behalf. Look, I completely agree with Erin where she said it's not an adoption, it's an acknowledgement of work done. If we were provided a piece of art by a youth member that asked to put it on the website, it would be exactly the same thing. We're acknowledging the work that has happened. I'm happy to work in with the group to provide a level of comfort because, as the Mayor said, she's the conduit and we do need her to be comfortable when delivering these messages. So I think we've done that. But the body of work that has happened, believe it, agree with it, whatever you want. You don't have to adopt it. You don't have to take it as gospel. This is merely an acknowledgement of the work that's done. And that's how it sits. And a couple of the other points that I just wanted to pick up on. Yes, commuting, I completely agree. Commuting to the city and work and everything is different to local commuting. The conversations that go on at the Yak are around trying to get to university. That's where the frustration's coming. and some classes that they're just not even going to anymore because it's just not worth the 4-hour round trip for an hour tube. Those are what the conversations are. That's what the problems are. And yes, the train date, keep on getting pushed back, and not even telling us is frustrating everyone. And this is clear in the way that the youth have addressed this and are addressing us through this process. I think, like I said, I think we've added a level of comfort here. So I think we should be able to alleviate this and really give it a strong vote. We have staff, very educated staff sitting behind us, recommending what this sat like and why it sits in front of us. I don't think there's anything here to worry about. So let's not make mountains out of molehills. Let's vote this through and show the support that this deserves. Thank you.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Thank you. Division? Couldn't quite hear. Councillor Davies has called a division. All those in favour, please stand. And I'll call your name out. All those in favour are Councillor Davies, Councillor Kosh, Councillor Goldstone, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Shanks and Councillor Fraser. All those against are Councillor Valalonga, Councillor Little and Deputy Mayor Sample. The motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll keep. Does anyone want a break? It's 9 o'clock. Do you want to have a quick break? I beg pardon? I don't have any control over the air conditioner, but David might be able to have a look. You can't. We can't change it because it is cold. I've got it right on top of us. Okay. Are people keen to have a quick 5-minute break? Yep. Okay. I'll have a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 9:10. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So I think we might take our seats, guys, and we'll get started again. Thank you. Right. So I'm on page 60 of the agenda, and I'm looking at the recommendations from the Corporate and Community Services Committee. So we have 11.3, which is motions made under delegated authority for noting. So happy to accept a mover and a seconder for 11.3. Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Moved by Councillor Fraser, seconded by Deputy Mayor Samble. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Christmas in Gawler, 11.3.1. Is this the one you were? Yeah. Right. Okay, so I'll ask for a mover and a second, and then I'll go to you. Councillor Little is moving the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Valalonga is seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak at all? Councillor Valalonga, do you wish to speak? Councillor Kosh?
Thank you. Back to my question. I'm just wondering what conversations occurred with the Apex Club while this program was being developed.
So Bronte from the Apex Club did meet with me, and I think David. David, do you want to, and Henry? I think Henry is there. Yeah. Do you want to just report on that?
So through the chair, the indicative program that was presented in the CCS report, which is outlined in the dot points of the recommendations there, was discussed at that meeting and agreed to in principle. We're waiting for tonight's decision of council to ratify the motion and move the budget, essentially, before we finalise that program discussion. Council staff have established a meeting with Bronte at the Apex Club and other members of the Carols Committee, so to speak, for Thursday this week to have those further discussions. But the program as presented has been agreed in principle, yes.
Any other, Councillor Fraser?
It's just a quick comment. On Sunday, I went to the show over at the rec centre.
Oh, yeah.
And they had some really good stalls there. So I'm sort of hoping that the people that are running the Twilight Market might be able to get hold of some of them because they were really good.
And they were, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were fabulous. Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Little, are you happy for me to put the motion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. So that's that one. Community grants, 11.3.2. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Happy to move that way, Councillor Hughes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kosh. Any discussion? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So now we move on to external body reports, and we have a series of different reports and minutes to note. You happy to move the GRFMA minutes, Councillor Davies? Thank you. You happy to second? Councillor Kosh, any discussion? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group meeting. Actually, some really good minutes. Quite enjoyed reading those. Councillor Kosh, you happy to move that way? I think I saw Councillor Little first, seconded. So moved by Councillor Kosh, seconded by Councillor Little. Any discussion? Councillor Fraser.
When I was reading their minutes, just taking note of who was there, nearly everybody there was a member of council. I think there was one person that wasn't.
Dale Giles, who's the chair, was there. Yeah, I noticed that.
Is there more people on the committee than that just don't turn up?
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving across to Climate Emergency Action Plan Working Group minutes. Got a mover and a seconder. You're happy to move that way, Councillor Koch. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So that concludes the different minutes from the different groups. Now I don't have any questions on notice. Any questions about notice? Be none. Now we move on to motions on notice. Councillor Goldstone, you're first, cab off the rank.
Thanks. Yeah, look, I think the motion's fairly self-explanatory, and I did explain the rationale behind it in the email that I send out to everyone. The motion at this stage simply asks for Paul and his team to include comment on this option for council, which I believe is coming to the October council meeting, budget timeframes and processes and so forth. So at this early stage, it doesn't commit council to anything. It just asks for Paul to make comment on this option in his report. The council can consider it further down the track. In saying that, I do support the idea for the reasons that I put in there. So yeah, I'd like to make the motion.
You happy to second that way, Councillor Shanks?
Yeah, look, the budget process has been something that I personally put in a lot of work into. You know, trying to move items above, below the line that sort of captures that community sentiment. In my opinion, what I am finding is sometimes we're clouded in where the money comes from. And I don't think as elected members, with how engaged we are when we're boarding in on the conversations on the actual budget process, we're in a position to be able to take money off staff bids. I don't think we're unpacking the budget to a level that should give us the confidence. And if I was staff and I had elected members trying to take 100 grand off this and that, I'd be a little bit nervous. So I get that. This takes away those sorts of discussions, because I think, given the experience, it actually distracts from the items that are being trying to get moved. Having this money there, we're moving items above the line, below the line on behalf of the community that elected us to sit here. We're not interested in coming in and just wasting money. If we do have leftover funds from this percentage, it would make perfect sense that it gets rolled back into council initiatives that are recommended to us. But as I said, I think this is a sensible way forward and gives us a little bit of a buffer to be able to work into without trying to find money on line items that we do not unpack to the level we need to be able to educate ourselves to rightfully take or add money to these items. So I hope we can get some support here. As Councillor Goldstone pointed out, this is just looking for some comment around the process if we did look at doing it. So it's worth a look. And yeah, look, I really hope this goes a bit further and avoids some conversations that seem to happen this year in next year's process.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Goldstone, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Koch. Already be done, so we don't need to move that. So you're happy for me to move on? Councillor Shanks. I'd like to present your motion. Thank you.
Yeah, look, members, I'm going to move this motion, but I will be voting against it.
Don't have to move it, Nathan.
Yeah, I know I don't, but I will take my right to speak to it. The reason I am moving this is purely just to open the discussion and just to clear my intent in why this got moved. As you know, I'm a bit frustrated about this particular item, and the $2,000 a month that's going to the licensing on an item that has had no uptake, it's just a slap in the face that keeps on slapping, in my opinion. The reason I moved it and the intent is pretty obvious, and it aligns with my consistent pursuit of this item. The frustrating thing for me is the advice we got last night. I'm a realist. I'm happy to listen to that advice, but we really, as elected members, need that assistance way sooner than 8 o'clock the night before a meeting. I witnessed some correspondence going around on even people that couldn't even get into the agenda. There was a bit going on over this weekend on a big agenda. Timing didn't sit right. So I just plead that we get in front of that next time. If there was a draft of email sitting somewhere, the person that drafted it can give me a call. We could have avoided a lot here. But look, like I said, I'm picking up those points. I don't want to leave ourselves open and undo any work that we've just voted through on a previous motion. And I do take on board some of those points. But in the same way I'm taking on board some of those points, I do request that my points are taken on board as well moving forward. So on that note, if there's any further discussion, you're going to have to second the motion.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Lapsed for want of a seconder. Thank you. So Councillor Shanks, if you'd like to present your next motion, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, this motion, the Australia Day motion. Now, we know how the debate went last time, and quite frankly, I wasn't too happy about how that went. All that aside, the intent of the motion as it sat the first time this came to the chamber was no more than, as I saw it, no more than giving the opportunity to invite a conversation. I can't stress that point enough. We have a responsibility to listen to the voices of our community. If we have people in our community that are offended by what we do on Australia Day, or we have people in our community that are offended we're even talking about it, then we need to provide the opportunity for a conversation to be facilitated to run any concerns to ground for or against changing any of our council celebrations on that day. I've heard conflicting views, and I have been since this item has been raised. It's been more contentious as of late. I am noticing that. We can't deny that. This motion is only embracing that. We need to also realise we're not the only ones that are talking in this space. Mitcham Council was one that did run forward with it. I think Marion Council are also trying to push something through. We also have, I think, Launceston in Tasmania. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We're not trendsetters here. This is already happening. The conversations are happening. I just want to be a part of them in a proactive way. And I want to be able to facilitate a conversation that if this conversation opportunity comes back with the general community sentiment, the sentiment of our town, our 42 square kilometres and our 26,000 population, turn around and give us some good numbers that say, you know what, this isn't an issue for us, then we leave it alone. But what if there is a minority out there? What if there is some offence happening that we don't even realise, and there are some easy fixes that may not result in us actually moving what we do on the day, but maybe include a part of our community that otherwise aren't included to the level that they may like. Who knows? I think facilitating this conversation in a respectful, mature manner only promotes the opportunity for these sorts of items.
20 seconds, thanks.
3 minutes, that's right. These sorts of items to be discussed further. Why be scared of a conversation? It doesn't cost anything to talk to people you might not talk to regularly.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies.
Yeah, look, I mean, I know how the vote went last time, so not necessarily expecting too much, but I do think this is a motion that it should be noted. There has been some wording updates. Some of the more direct stuff has been, you know, little words like could be considered or that kind of thing to make it a bit less direct. But look, for me, just on a personal moral level, for me, I just think that if there's something that, you know, you agree with, then it shouldn't be about, well, do we agree with this until it causes mild discomfort? Like until we have to do something that means that we have to have some uncomfortable conversations or that kind of thing. Like I think that, you know, there are people who are for this, people who are against this, you know, in terms of Australia Day as a whole, but, you know, it's, I just don't think that, I don't think there should be a situation where there are, you know, so many people who are potentially for it, like, you know, and with numbers growing by the day, but it doesn't happen because those people say, well, I don't know, I don't really want to deal with any backlash or that kind of thing, because this is something that matters to, this is something that affects people. So yeah, that's why I'm happy to second it.
Look, I agree that the 26th of January is probably a bad date because it is actually Invasion Day. It's not the day that we were called Australia. We weren't called Australia till 1814. So, you know, it was a long time after that. It was actually in December when that happened. I don't disagree with points 1, 2, and 3, but I still believe it's a federal thing. It's not a local government. I do think that we can voice our opinion and say that maybe it should be looked at, but do we need to have a public community workshop on it? No, I don't think we do. The Mayor could perhaps write to the state and federal government and say that we would be willing for the date to be changed. But I can't vote for this because I don't agree with 4 and 5 in the motion. But I do agree with 1, 2, 3 and 3.
Any other discussion? Councillor Little?
Once I saw this motion, I actually, when it was brought up earlier this year by the then Councillor Tooley, I wasn't at that meeting because I had a family death in the family. But having been tied up with the Aboriginal community for many years, they're actually split as well. So under the conversation I've had with a few of them and I don't know if anybody knows the Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs, Jacinda. I do. She's one of the Aboriginal women that's pretty outspoken. She wants to keep Australia Day as it is because of her European heritage on her father's side. He was Scottish. Now I spoke to another one called Mundine. He's the opposite. He wishes to change it. But most of them agree that yeah, something has to happen, but they'd like it to be done at the federal level. They would like it to be done in a respectful way. Some of them even suggested to me that some ceremonies could be moved, and sometimes they brought up different dates as well. Well, somebody said to me at the 1st of January, but most of the Indigenous people on the 1st of January in this state would not like it because that's when they lost their right to vote back in 1901 when we became a federation. A lot of people do not remember, but the Aboriginal women in this state had the right to vote in 1896 before European women did. That right was taken off on the 1st of January. So there's a lot of dates you've got to look at, but the conversation has to be had. But I think it has to be had federally, at state level first and federally. But I can see Councillor Fraser's point. It wouldn't hurt this council to say, we think a discussion should take place in regard to this matter. If we, because we have a RAP ourselves, and I'm on that as well, speaking to some of the Aboriginal people there. They are divided as well how it would be done too, but they all agree it should be done federally on most of the time, and some discussion should be had at all levels of government, whether it be council, state or federal. I look at this and I'm a bit like, I want to vote for it, but I can't because I've got a lot of Aboriginal friends who would go crook at me if I did. I'd have a couple of others who would go crook at me because I didn't. So I'm in the middle. I was brought up with my father, who was an Aboriginal soldier who was not recognised by the RSL, was not allowed to vote until 1966. So I have a bit of emotion about this. So I know the background. Dad was always proud of the Australian flag, but I don't know how we'd go on this because he's been long gone. But I'd love to support this, but I would like also, if this does not get up, that the mayor be given the authority through council to write to both state and federal, showing our support for a possible change of date that suits all peoples of Australia. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Shanks, you can close the debate. Thank you.
Firstly, members, thank you for those of you that spoke. It is a delicate issue. I do acknowledge that. And look, I was actually sitting here in awe with some of the comments that Councillor Fraser put forward, and especially Councillor Little. Some of those divided conversations and some of that experience and some of that knowledge is exactly what I think this motion would really promote. If we're talking about wanting to say, you know what, we think there should be a conversation on a federal level. We think that maybe we should write a letter. How powerful is that letter? How powerful is that conversation request with the outcome of a facilitated workshop on a community level? That's what we need to think about here. This motion as it sits, we're not talking about changing a date. We're talking about, we've teased out tonight, there is divided views. We all agree that there are divided views. Now, whichever way you sit on this item, I want to continue that conversation. I want to hear more about Councillor Little's friends. I want to hear more about the dates that Councillor Fraser put forward. I want to hear more about how Cody thinks this affects us and our generation. And then I also want to give the opportunity to the members of the public that this does affect. This affects them because of their heritage, their beliefs. I don't think we have anything to lose here by having a well-facilitated public consultation workshop to continue the conversation that we're just tickling on the edges here tonight. We do not have the power to make up the minds for these people, for people that are affected by this. So I plead elected members to support this. We really have nothing to lose. And let's keep this conversation going as a council that does want to listen to all aspects of their community. We're not a big council by any means. We should capitalise on engagement on these sorts of things and show how it's done.
I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? The motion is lost. Thank you. Councillor Valalonga has called a division. All those in favour, please stand. All those in favour of Councillor Davies, Councillor Valalonga and Councillor Shanks. All those against are Councillor Kosh, Goldstone, Little, Hughes, Deputy Mayor Samble and Councillor Fraser. The motion is lost. Thank you, everyone. Now, we have a motion here about code of practice. Are you happy to move that way, Councillor Shanks?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to move this way. I mean, I just see it as a little bit more ink, to be honest. The background that we might have a little bit of an opportunity to add to our motions, I think we talk about efficiencies in debate, we talk about cutting our ability to now speak for 5 minutes, all those things. Imagine if you got a little bit of a preamble before, after the recommendation, very similar to an officer's report. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I don't have the time to dedicate to the sort of officer report level that we receive as elected members. But just giving a couple of paragraphs on backgrounds, on motives and reasons why, I don't see the harm in any of that for an elected member to point out. And then secondary to that, it also allows the people that are reading public agendas to see a little bit of a preamble of why a motion might be recommending that we want to report back on whatever. Like I said, I really don't see the harm in it. And I'm looking at the motion as it sits right now and see 2/3 of a page sitting here blank. We have the room. It's just a matter of pressing print. And I think for a public document to just quote an elected member's reasoning, again, no harm at all. So I see the merit of this and I'm happy to move it.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ballalonga, do you wish to speak? No discussion? Councillor Bosch and then Councillor Fraser and Councillor Goldstein.
Yeah, I just want some clarity. Councillor Shanks could do that for me. He talks about financial implications, risk and opportunities. Where would you be sourcing that information from?
I don't think I quite get your, because it's going to be a case by case.
So the question is, where would you get the financials and the risk and opportunity, or would they be something you develop yourself?
Yeah, so this the way that I see it is the recommendation comes as a motion, and the preamble gives some reasoning behind it, but it has to be accepted as a quote from a councillor, and it's no different to me telling you some financial implications on the night, opposed to it being a sentence. You can take it with a grain of salt, or you can ask questions leading into it so you're not caught off guard. That's the way I look at that.
So you wish...
Anybody could just make a number up. I mean, that's sort of...
I guess that's part of the merit of putting the motion on notice. It's up to the person putting it to substantiate that.
But
and then it's up to the members to either believe or not believe, or vote or not vote for it.
I would assume that you'd go to finance to get the financial implications, and then you'd go to someone to talk about the risk and opportunity if you're really going to do it. Otherwise, you're just pulling something out of thin air.
Well, that's part of the merit of the motion, I would have thought.
But can I get that explained? Are you
Well,
actually going to get...
I think Councillor Shanks has provided an explanation, so we won't go back and forward. Yeah. Now, I think it was Councillor Fraser and then Councillor Goldstein.
Councillor Kosh, I've got here underlined financial implications and risk opportunity, and I say for staff to assess, and we are not qualified. So I think if they were removed, I would vote for it, but I can't vote for it with those two in there because I just don't think we're qualified for those two things.
So the seconder, the mover, you're happy to move financial implications and risk and opportunity. Is that, did I hear that right? So Chris, including a short background. Okay, it's out. Done. Okay. You happy, seconder? Seconder has nodded. Okay, Councillor Goldstone.
I had exactly the same issues, and I was going to recommend shorting it to that. Good example was the motion that I just put up, the email that I sent out, which explained the rationale for the motion. Something short, a couple of paragraphs, just gives some background documents. But it doesn't require financial analysis and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, Councillor Davies.
Yeah, happy to support this. I think from the point of view of a member of the public, I think there have been motions that you see in the motions on notice and you're like, well, I'm not actually clear on what's going on here, because all of that discussion was had via email that the elected members saw from the preamble and such when it was put up via private email, but it didn't make it onto the agenda. And I think it would just be clearer to be able to have context surrounding motions.
Thank you.
funny thing. I was actually going to vote for the original motion if it included financial implications, risk and opportunity. I just wanted to clarify how we got that. Because I do have concern that we get motions on notice without any financial information at all, and then all of a sudden it gets voted up, and then where does money come from? It's got to come from somewhere. I mean, my preferred option is that we write a short background, that's a couple of paragraphs, but we do get the financial implications of finances and we get the risk and opportunity. So we actually get a full picture of what this motion means. Because like, for example, the next one talks about putting a full weather path in. I mean, what's the cost of that? Is that concrete or asphalt or whatever? I mean, that's thousands and thousands of dollars. And that just could potentially just get voted up without any sort of really analysis of what we're doing and how that fits into all the other things that we're doing, like the risk of doing that over something else. So in some respects, I was quite happy with the first one. I just wanted to clarify where the financial modelling was coming from and where the risk modelling was coming from. So, I mean, I probably won't support this now because we're back to where we were, and that's getting motions on notice without any financial, information with it. So we end up voting for, so potentially you end up voting for something that you don't know what's going to cost, and I think that's not good governance. So now I won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? No. Councillor Shanks, you can close the debate. Thank you.
Thank you for the conversation there, members. Yeah, a couple of points. The financial implications, I can give you financial implications on construction projects through my experience. But as you might have noticed, they don't align in some cases on a local government level. So I think the financial implications, I can turn around and give you figures and I can give you facts of why and whatever else, but I'll get shut down with, oh, you don't have the experience for this. I know better because of this, or I've had more experience in this. I'm actually happy just to drop that out, and my preamble will give an opinion of risk and opportunity, because that's what motions on notice are. They have to be voted on the merit. I'm not going to stop moving motions to get things done because I haven't got the dollar figure sorted out. We move motions to get the organisation to implement the direction of council. We need to remember that the next motion that we're talking about, which I'll leave to the next motion, is an example of what motions on notice can achieve and help our community get to assist with their safety, et cetera, et cetera. I think financial implications and risk on opportunity, although it would have been fantastic, I'm never going to be able to provide you the level of scrutiny you want. That's going to be on you to ask me why I received this, why I've arrived at where I arrived when I move whatever motion I move. And that's, again, back to the merit of the motion. Don't vote it through if you're that worried about it. But as it sits, I think a little preamble, being able to give a couple of paragraphs that gives a bit of background, does soften the blow a little bit on a public level, given the fact that we've nearly halved our opportunity of debating. So I think this is a good compromise and a good way forward to make sure that our messages are clear out there in the community. Thank you.
Put that motion. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Thank you. So next we have a notice of motion, Redbanks, Haynes Road, Dawkins Avenue, Miranda. You happy to move that way, Councillor Shanks?
Yeah, look, when this first came up, I was going to support it, and nothing's changed really. I live just off Haynes Road. I commute that road every single day. I take my daughter to childcare, and around that time is when Xavier students are walking through, traffic's banked up, cars everywhere. I walk those roads. And look, what we're talking about here is addressing, I think, an issue that's almost tied a little bit to the Edward Street footpath. It's the same issue, the same school, the same students. You heard my argument on the night of inadequate footpaths creating a risk. This is exactly the same. And I think that we should look at this safety issue. And with an all-weather seal to the section of gravel of dirt running from the roundabout to Red Banks Road overpass, we're not talking massive dollars there. But look, I take on board what Councillor Koch is pointing out. But I think this is a problem that is in our remit that we can solve pretty quickly. And I ask councillors to support this and ensure that that we address a safety concern and the issues associated with it. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Valalonga, do you wish to speak? No. Mr. Delena, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for giving me the opportunity. I just, the cost to establish the all-weather seal on the gravel and the alignment, there's a bit of work involved, and we are working with DIT at the moment with the state government with respect to a pedestrian crossing in that space. And we did have a below the line budget bid in the order of $260,000 to do exactly this, as well as improve some pedestrian access around the roundabout as well. So I'm just wondering whether 2 and 3 could get wrapped up together per se, and that we bring a report back to council with 2 months, advising the best way to safe crossing the students and how we can achieve an all-weather seal. And that way there we can, you know.
So you're suggesting keep 2 and then add, hang on a minute, resolves that a report be brought back within the next 2 months that advises on the best way to provide, including an all-weather seal.
Correct. Yeah. It's obviously up to the mover, but I think that's when it enables us to consider, you know, the implications of the actual motion, given that they are reasonably significant.
I'll put that to the mover. Okay, seconder? Yep, okay. So Chris, did you catch that? So we wrap 2 and 3 up together and just put, that's it, including an sort of resultant report to provide the best ways, including an all-weather seal. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes sense, doesn't it? Thank you, mover and seconder. Any other discussion? Councillor Fraser.
Yes, last year, I think it was last year, I can't remember, we had a Williston traffic intervention, is that what it was called? And this was this part of it?
The issue of students
This
pouring
particular
over the
roundabout
bridge.
Would have been part of it, wouldn't it?
It came up, the issue of students and how many students walk over the
Sorry, I
bridge.
can't.
The issue came up, yes, around the volume of students that walk over the bridge, and also about safety measures that could be employed. So yes, there was some ideas put forward, I think, weren't there?
And so that's
Sam's
part
nodding.
of the discussion that Mr. Delena's having with DIT, is that right?
I would think so, yes. Is that correct, Mr. Delena?
There's been, I know MP Piccolo has been involved in this space as well, and there's been a prelim design, which I don't necessarily support, but there's effectively an approach where we're working with DIT under the Way to Go program in terms of providing some improved accessibility to schools. We could partner in regards to some improvements being made here.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that addresses that question. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Deputy Mayor, then who's next? Councillor Hughes, hang on a minute, I'll just call them in order. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Koch, and Councillor Davies. Did you have a hand up? No? Okay, in that order. Deputy Mayor, you've got the floor.
Well, I'm glad Councillor Fraser raised that point, because when that traffic management thing was done, I thought there was something that came out of that because that was reported about school. And I mean, when does DIPTI take a bit of responsibility for these sort of things? When do the police take the responsibility instead of using those cameras? We heard tonight from Gillian about all the people that don't stop at the stop signs. I just wonder, as a council, why do we have to be able to do something and send our staff back? They've got enough things to do now to bring forward another report. What about when we get that report? What are we going to do with it? You know, we're probably going to say, oh, we'll get the police to monitor that or whatever it may be. That's been a problem a long time. Do we have to wait, sadly, till somebody's hurt? And that seems to be the way things happen. Look, we've got to, it's got to be a discussion with DipTi, with the police department. And, you know, tonight we heard about Eden Street and everything. It's a damn problem in there. I mean, surely every one of us sitting around the table here understood the problem that we heard from the speakers there tonight. What are we going to do about it? Who's going to do something about it? It should be done next week. But we don't do it like that. We'll do it next year in February. I'm just not sure why council is responsible for that problem out there to do with the school. Where do the schools fit into this? Aren't they responsible for their children to come to that magnificent school? Getting bigger and bigger all the time. I just think that we've got to be able to pull people together, have a talk as a council, but not take on the responsibility that we're going to fix it. I don't believe we can fix it. There's government authorities that don't seem to be doing much about fixing it. Otherwise, they'd have plenty of fines from jumping the stop sign, as Gillian said there tonight. That's happening every day, tomorrow as well.
Councillor Hughes, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll support it now that point 3 has been changed because I knew it was going to be a lot of money. But this has been raised in our IES meetings over the years. We've discussed this a number of times and it was prioritised, but we also knew it was going to be a lot of money to try and sort this out. So it sounds like that's going in the right direction. I do know whenever I'm through there and there are actually school teachers there, the crossing actually works really well. When the teachers aren't there, the students are just all over the whole roundabout. And it does concern me that if this is not done cleverly, you could end up with don't actually having an accident with students just speeding across as well. So yeah, it does have to be done very carefully. And yeah, thankfully there hasn't been a serious accident there yet. And but yeah, when it is policed by teachers, it does run really well. The roundabout, it's just sometimes it's just a flood of students and the whole roundabout just closes up. See that happen quite often. But yeah, no, it's been raised for a number of years, so hopefully this progresses.
I think it was Councillor Kosh next.
Look, I'm happy to support it now. I mean, this is exactly what I said from with the last motion. You get motions up on notice without any financial implications at all, and people get excited and emotional. Oh yes, we'll vote for it, and I vote for it, and then all of a sudden you've got a bill for $200,000, or you've taken away the responsibility for DEEP to actually do something about it. It's heartening to know that council's actually discussing it with DIT, and you know, to get a solution. Hopefully that they'll fund it. It's their road, isn't it? Isn't it their road? It must be their road. I mean, you know, you've got to be very careful with these motions on notice that you don't sort of jolly well commit us to stuff that we don't know the budget cost or the implications because we think on the night it's a good idea. You know, let's be serious about this and really be a bit more responsible. And so I'm happy to support this now. Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Shanks, you can place it back. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the beauty of debate. There's a motion on notice here that an elected member picked up. We talked it through. We've got an outcome that is seeming like we're a little bit more comfortable with. Now, I would need to spend an ample amount of time trying to figure out how all-weather seal section of gravel, the meterage, the design, the scope and everything like that to turn around and give you a proper price. Look, I'm not in the position to do that, nor do I want to waste my time It is good hearing that the conversations are happening. I think the report to come will be able to bring those conversations into the chamber to be able to hear what conversations have actually been happening, what solutions may be on the cusp. As Mr. Delena pointed out, you know, there's been budget bids below the line on these sorts of works. Maybe we do need to start thinking as an elected body about moving those bids above the line. You know, we've just had our monthly financial report come up to council. We're sitting in another favourable good win there. These are the sorts of safety issues that maybe we should start looking at prioritising once we understand the validity of the cost involved, the safety concerns. I completely agree with Councillor Hughes that this needs to be done appropriately. Yeah, so look, I'm happy to support it the way that it sits, and yeah, look, let's continue on with the conversation. I do get frustrated sometimes about the speed these things happen, and I do really hope that nothing happens that's catastrophic to any students before we act on it. But taking on board all my colleagues' comments, and look, I hope we can support this and just show we're looking into it.
I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Thank you. That completes the motions on notice. Councillor Fraser, extension of time from 10:30 till 11. You've moved that way. You seconded, Deputy Mayor? Yep. I'll put that. That's okay, but we'll put the motion and you can vote accordingly. So we have a mover and a seconder. So did you catch that, Chris? Councillor Fraser and Councillor Deputy Mayor? Yep. I'll put that motion. All those in favour that we extend, all those against, it is carried. Thank you. Okay. So now moving to motions without notice. I'll move to item 17. I'll just highlight a couple of things that I've been to.
In clarification, I understood that Councillor Hughes maybe was thinking about a motion without notice regarding the squash club. Is that still the case, or?
I'd probably accept it as a motion on notice. I think it probably needs to be a motion on notice. He's more than welcome to, but I would push it as a motion on notice. Yeah. So I'm just going to go through a couple of things that I've been to in the last month on behalf of council. So the mural opening at Taylor and Forgey's, Whale Tail, local artist Kyle Armstrong did an amazing historical interpretation of the history of Taylor and Forgey. If you've not seen it, please go and have a look. It is quite stunning and it really is an excellent mural for the town. We had some members came along to the council member workshop, cultural awareness with Jack Buckskin. I can't remember the name of his colleague, Steve Warrior. Was it Steve Warrior? Yeah, Steve Warrior, that's right. And it was just really exceptionally good. I think if you didn't get along to it, you know, maybe we can do another one next year, but I think we've had enough workshops for the time being. But yeah, it really was an important workshop, and I think we can build on that with our reconciliation action. Some of us went along to the workshop for the Gawler Main Street, and I thought that was a really good presentation from both Prospect and also David West from Main Street SA. It was really, I thought, a very positive conversation, very interesting, lots of good ideas being thrown around by many people in the room. We had a citizenship ceremony on the 16th of September, and they are always really wonderful ceremonies with lots of families coming along and becoming Australian citizens. It's always really a privilege to be a part of that. I was invited to be a speaker on the Fearless Conversations Forum panel. I was asked to be a part of that by the Lord Mayor, Sandy Boucher, and that was on infrastructure and also growth. And if you didn't see the Sunday Mail, that was as part of that Fearless Conversations. They're doing about 13 of these, the Advertiser and Flinders University, and they are really interesting issues coming up and ideas being put forward. And I think it really was an opportunity to focus on what we're doing here in Gawler, and I think that was a great opportunity. And on the weekend, I went to the council sponsored a big fun day that the Zonta Club of Gawler put on, and service clubs assisted with, and lots of people came along, many storeholders. It was a really fantastic day. Crafty did the music. It was really well run. I also went to St George's Anglican Church for their 100th anniversary of the installation of their church bells. And it is a beautiful church. The bells are fabulous, and yeah, it was a lovely, lovely service. So that's my wrap up. Council members' attendance. I'll go with Councillor Davies first, and then Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that Main Street workshop, which was very interesting, and we had a lot of discussion. We had a community corporate services meeting after that, which we also continued to discuss what we could do with that information. So that should be coming back again in relation to outcomes from that workshop. I also wanted to mention, I went along to the last Gawler Repair Cafe, which has moved to the Everton Gardens Library, and it's a really great initiative. If you have anything that, you know, if you're just like, oh, I need a, you know, button on my jacket, or I need some jewelry fixed, or that kind of thing. They've got various bike fixing. They've got various options there that you can sort of sign up in advance, and someone there will come along and be able to help you fix your stuff rather than throwing it out. So there's another one coming up this month, later this month. So that's the Gawler Repair Cafe. So a very good idea.
Councillor Hughes.
I had last Thursday the Gawler Area Health Advisory Council meeting. A couple of things that were mentioned in the surgical sort of reviews was some concerns with COVID, the low vaccination rates for our area in Gawler and Elizabeth they were talking in the 20%. As I think I thought it would have been a lot higher, but I don't know how old their data was, but that was quite concerning. They have actually ramped up the wards in the hospital, so they are just about full. The way the doctors sort of in the past have sort of controlled who is admitted has changed. So they are trying to take a lot of pressure off the other hospitals around the city and the state. So yeah, they are really concerned if at the 80% mark, there will be a real ramping up of and yeah, huge requirement on the medical services and looking at plans and how to do that. This week, we're sort of in the final stages of finalising the plans for the emergency department. So that should be going out to tender soon. And we do have an AGM coming up next month, and part of that AGM will be some discussions about the new emergency department and some of that. So that'd be quite good. But yeah, especially the COVID vaccination sort of information I thought was quite concerning because those rates don't sound very good at all.
Been keeping an eye on those rates, and I thought it was a lot higher. I thought it was about 47%. So that's interesting where they're getting their data from. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Fraser.
Can I just ask David question about the COVID injections, where their stats come from. Do their stats come from postcode or do they come from where they've been given?
And my understanding is from postcode. So yeah, it's not where they're given because yeah, there's a lot of people from out of our area coming in for vaccinations. But yeah, I'm not sure where the data was coming from, but I was really surprised how low it was.
I know that I had mine done up in Tanunda because I couldn't get in here. And I know a lot of my friends went to Tanunda or they went down to Elizabeth because that was early in the piece because you couldn't get the injections in Gawler. So I was just wondering where the stats came from. I'd just like to say that I went to the Women of Worth luncheon and the speaker was amazing. It was, she was, I'm trying to think of her name. That's right.
Yeah.
And she's the speaker we had on Australia Day. But on Australia Day, she was very serious. Yeah. And at this, she was, you know, how you can make something about mental health so funny, I don't know. But she was absolutely, she was brilliant. She was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was very good.
Yeah, she was brilliant. Any other elected member reports? No? Okay. So happy to accept a motion that we have the written and also verbal reports included in the minutes. Are you happy to move that way, Councillor Little? Do I have a second to Councillor Hughes? All those in favour? Carried and against? It is carried. Thank you. So that concludes that. Now we'll move to our confidential reports. We have 19.1 and we have a recommendation that we go into confidence to discuss tenders. And how do you wish to proceed, Council? Councillor Shanks, you happy to move that way?
Yeah, I think it's right to move into confidence given it's a commercial contract we're discussing.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Little. All those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Yeah, that's on there. Thank you. So we'll clear the room.